All right, we're back. It is COMP125, and it's week 5, lesson 5, part 1 of the summer 2016 semester for web or client-side web development. When we were here last day together, we were talking about a couple things. We talked about Bower, which is our front-end package manager, if you will. A little bit of Node. Again, we didn't really talk too much about Node because Node is not part of our class. But one thing we've done now is in our project, just to go from last day, we have a scripts lib folder where we have Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and jQuery. Those things we've done. All right, so that's one part of your lab. That's, again, due this Friday. You should be done, right? Most people are. The other thing we're going to talk today about more is the lesson. This week's lesson is all about the DOM, document object model, the BOM, the browser object model, and other things related to it. So let me just bring up the PowerPoint again, just to kind of continue from what we did. And this is just to keep us on track to make sure that we're all aligned with what we've been doing. I also have to talk briefly about the exam. That's will be done on week 7. Remember that week 7 we're going to have our midterm test. Some people call it an exam, right? Remember that for the midterm test, that you will be having to produce something in-house. I'll be giving you a template. It should be fairly straightforward. If you've done some of the lessons we've been doing and the labs throughout this time, then the midterm test should be easy. If you haven't done it or you don't know what to do, then it'll be challenging, right? So be prepared to kind of do again and show me again in real time that you know how to do things with writing stuff into your HTML document from JavaScript. So actually injecting content, you should be able to do that, and also as well as reading from your HTML document and storing your data in variables, outputting to the console. Those two things for sure, 100%. If you don't know how to do them already, they're going to be on your midterm test. I know it sounds like easy stuff, and it is, but some people still won't be able to do what I've asked. So please, if you haven't had a chance to do that, go over those concepts. So last day we talked about this idea of the window being kind of the node that's the parent, and then you have your document and your screen that comes underneath that. And we did a couple of things here in the just to recap, in the APP, so the app.js file here. Also, I talked about running things like HTTP server. So I'm going to open this up in terminal. And we're running things with HTTP server just so that we can test to see what it would really be like locally before we put things out remotely. So if I run HTTP server, you should get something like this. I'm running a Mac, so I get an extra address. You'll have 3 if you're running a Windows machine. And then when I test things out, again, I want to see what my localhost gives me. Then I'll have access to what looks like a server-based website locally. And the reason why we want to start doing this now, as we move towards more interesting topics like Ajax and so on, is because a lot of those new things we're going to be talking about won't work without a server. It just won't work properly. It'll fail. It'll say no access or cross-site scripting, security issues with Chrome and so on. So we run a little server to take care of that issue. And also, it's kind of better from a testing perspective, right? OK, so that's what we kind of did already. Notice, again, I get some feedback from the server. And the other thing to note is every time we make a change to the app.js file, we need to reboot the server, restart the server. Otherwise, it won't reflect our changes. OK, so those kind of things. Also, I've talked about how to swap out our pages with the switch statement. And we've done it just for my home and about screens, but I'm going to do the same thing for my contact and my projects pages as well. Let's add those in. So again, I'm working with a file, COMP125, lesson 5. You can find that up on GitHub. So add a couple more of these pages in here. So one of them is, again, I'm using a switch statement to go through the document title. And one of them is this contact page. So if I go to the contact page, I'm swapping by title. So my contact me is the title of my contact page. Got to make sure it's very accurate. If I don't have that in here properly, then it won't work. So contact me. So you're at the contact me page. This is just a console log just to detect which page I'm on. And I'm doing this because it'll reduce the errors we get. If I only have, I want to only have certain JavaScript that works for only certain pages, not for any generic page. And the reason for that is if I make it for every page, but if I have an element on one page that exists, but an element on another page that doesn't, then I'll get these, errors in my JavaScript, and I don't want that. So I want to almost like trigger my JavaScript per page. And of course, I'm going to do that with functions. So a function, instead of this console log, I'm going to replace the console log with a function for each of my pages. And you know what I'm going to call them? The name of the page. So about, home will be the function name, or about me, or contact me, or whatever. And this one will be the projects page. So again, I'm just checking the title of the project page to make sure what it is. This is just projects. We'll just test it really quickly again. It's important to know how to do this kind of stuff so that way, in the future when you're doing a real project, you can think about ways, it's not the only way, by the way, of switching between different pages with one single JavaScript file. You don't have to use multiple JavaScript files. Some people use one JavaScript file per page. Okay, you could do that too. But that's more maintenance. Maintenance becomes a maintenance nightmare, right, for you to take care of all those pages, right? So, all right, so we've got our switch statement. Let's test it to make sure that it knows which page we're on, like we did this last time. And also notice that at the bottom of my page, I'm just going to show my document.url to show what the URL string is at the top of the document. All right, so hey, I've changed my page. I got to restart my server to make sure this is proper. There it is. And now when I go here and if I refresh, and I open up the inspector, so here's my inspector, and I see my console, you can see that you are at the contact page. And if I click on home, you are at home. You are at the projects page. You're at the about me page. So it detects which page I'm on now. That's good. And then we detect it through JavaScript. Now we can really parse our file and create some functions, be a little bit more organized than we've been so far. So far, we've been really damn disorganized, just putting our JavaScript wherever. I want to kind of compartmentalize all this within functions. That's what we do with JavaScript. So let's do that. Let's go back and do that now. OK, so obviously, we don't need these little console logs. They're just tests. So we want to kind of go in here and say, well, we'll call this the home function, right? So we'll call the home function. When we're home, call the home function. We don't have that yet. We will. When we're in the about me page, call the about function. We don't have that yet either. And likewise, contact. Notice I'm making them capitals, but you can make them whatever you like, as long as it makes sense. Projects. Hey, we don't have this. And you know what? This little switcheroony here, the switch statement, I want to make this, let's get rid of this. I want to make this into its own function too. So I want to call the function, and that function will call the other functions, right? And I want to call that function on page load, right? So when my page loads, but it can't be just my page load, it's the body of my document loading. So there's a couple ways I could do this. I could put an event listener on my body tag. My body tag, I can make an ID, whatever, and then I can add in on load equals to, and then the function, this whatever function we'll call this. Or I can just write it here in JavaScript, which is what I'm going to do. Let's make a function. We're going to call this page switcher. And you can make this call whatever you like. And in my function page switcher, I'm going to include this switch statement. That's all I'm going to do here. So it's going to just switch my page. So cut, paste. And I want to just format my code so it looks nice. There we go. So in my page switcher function is going to trigger first. So how do I do that? I want to create an event listener at the bottom of my page that calls the page switcher function. So what do? Remember we talked about that the document has different items, like the body, document body. That refers to the document body tag, right? The body tag inside the document, which should be, everyone has that. It's this, right? The body tag. So I want to, kind of add an event listener to the body tag that says on load, right? Then call the page switcher event. Call the page switcher event. So this waits for the document to load, and then we call the event. This is important because we don't want to call this page switcher event until everything is loaded up. Okay, let's call the home page now. So we'll try it on the home page. Now this is the page switcher function. We'll add some other functions in here, and we'll put them in order here. So we'll say home, a function, home, oh. And the home function, we'll put in there the same stuff we had before, which is like a console log, you're at home. So you know that the same kind of idea we're going to do, you are at the home page for now. And I'm going to make a bunch of functions just so that we don't get any errors. I'm just going to copy this, kind of go down here. And we'll do the same thing. This will be the about. So it's home, about, contact, and projects. Home, about, I made too many. Contact, and projects. Kill this. Add some spacing. There we go. And we're obviously at the about page. This will be the same idea, except we'll be calling a function to do everything we do instead of we're putting it directly into our switch statement. So basically, I can break out my pages this way. So each function encapsulates everything I need for that one page, right? So it doesn't spill into the other functions and everything else. It's a good use of functions, right? Let's test them out, see if it works. So again, because I've changed stuff, I'm going to go back into my HTTP server, stop it, and restart it, and then go back into my page and refresh, right? Uh-oh, what happened? How come that didn't work? Yeah. Huh? Control C. There I go, my home page. Oh man, what happened? How come it's not going to that function? We know it's working, right? But how come I can never get to that function again, right? It could be that it's not linked properly, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is, as soon as I click on my projects or about or home, right, I'm going to go to this page and it should print out what I'm doing. But we have a problem. Remember, I did this document body of add event listener load, and I'm loading the page switcher event right here. Right here's my page switcher. So when this loads, I'm doing this, right? Now, again, I got to think of what this means. Body add event listener. When everything loads, then I should be able to tell what the title is, right? So let's just do a little test here. Again, I'll put that console log back in. Console log, home. I'm just going to test this for a second, and I want to show you this so you see what. I'm not crazy, right? Again, when on load, I don't have to put on. I just put the load event. Go to the page switcher. So I got to check to see if this document.body add event listener is actually working. So save. Stop my server, redo it, go back to my page, and I'm at the home page to refresh. No, right? So it's not even getting there anymore. Used to, but not anymore. Why? Well, it's all about the way we're thinking about things. I'm saying once I get to the body, when my whole body loads, then I want to inject, or I want to kind of run my function. So again, I'm trying to think of how it works. And to simulate what I'm talking about here, just so you guys can see, right? I'm calling for the body load event to trigger. I know that this would work if I said something like this instead of this, right? Page switcher. If I did something like this, I'm going to just comment this out for a second. If I said window, if I went to my window, remember we talked about different models now. If I go window, right, on load, if I did one of these, which is like window.add event listener load, and I pointed to my page switcher, I went to one of those like this, right? So it's my page switcher. If I did this, right? Let's see what happens now. I'm just going to stop my server, restart it again, go back to my page and refresh, right? I get it, right? Here, home, you are at the home page, and I click everything else, and now it seems to be all working. But why not the body event, right? I mean, it should work in our minds. We're thinking, it should work. And what's the difference between window and the body event. Remember I talked about this. The window is the browser. That's what it represents. So actually, it'd be nice if it was just called browser, right? So it's the browser model. Document is the body of the document. So we're waiting for the document to load, and this is happening asynchronously, right? The body loads, and then I call the function, okay? But my question is, you know, am I putting up the wrong event listener? Because if I go here, window.onload. What if I just did the other way around? If I change this from window.onload to window add event listener load, it should be the same, right? Switcher. I'm just showing you the different forms of the event handling, right? And we're doing window, not document body, for a second, just so we can see what I'm talking about here. Right? There it is. And let's check to see if this is the same. So I'm going to kind of stop debugging, go back, HTTP server, going up here, refresh, and we're still good, right? So both forms, window.onload and window add event listener load, they're equivalent, right? That's something to note. So these two forms that I used before are the same. How come this didn't work? Well, there's a couple, and by the way, this is outside of any other function. See, this is inside this main function, but outside everything else. So I don't have anything else. It's inside the IFI, but it's outside the other functions. So it's kind of anything I do here happens globally, related to these ones over here. Okay, we'll document these in a second. So I could do something like this. I could, at the top of my file, start a list of variables, and I could do something like this. My var, I'll call it, page body. I'll call this a page body, or is equal to, document. Now, is it get element by ID? If I want to get the body, get element by tag name, right? Get element by tag name. Does it get element by tag name or get elements by tag name? Well, it's elements, right? So if I say my tag name is body, that's the tag name. And if I was going to just show this, so let's show what this looks like. Console.log, a page body. Just to see this, so I'm trying to get the same idea. I'm trying to hook into the body tag, right? Just showing you this for a second so you can see. Save. Relaunch. So I'm getting document.get elements, more than one element. So it's an array. So page body itself is an array of elements. Now, if I return this, it should give me back an array. Let's take a look. Or a list, if you will. Go back here, refresh. It's a body, and then you can see that the first element of the body tag, which is the only one, is a list to my body tag, right? And you can see that there's navbar, nav, all the inner HTML for my first child, and all that stuff. I can go through. So actually, I have access to my body tag this way. But what I got to be careful about is how I reference it. What I really mean is get my page body, get elements by body by tag name, and I want to get the first element, right? The 0th element, because it returns a list, an array. Now, we only have one body tag in the page, right? Only one. But it still returns a list, which means it's one element of a list of elements, and therefore I got to access the first one. Let's take a look at what we get now. So if I press save, and if I go back, so redo, and go back to the page and refresh, you get a totally different thing here, right? Here's my body element now, right into that body element, right? And I can see that what I'm getting in my console is the entire body element. Okay, cool. So, therefore, I should be able to do something like this now. Going back to my code, I could, just like I did up here, do something instead of like what I've done down here. Let's just comment this out for a second, right? I could do something like this. Page body add event listener. You can add an event listener to anything, right? Load. On my page body loading, let's just make an inline function to test it, or anonymous function. Only going to run once. It's going to say something like, body loaded. Why am I doing all this stuff? So you see the differences. That's why, because you may not know. right? So page body, again, is an HTML element if I hover over it, right? Because now I'm looking at the 0th element inside my get elements by tag name. I'm not doing get element by ID, right? I'm not doing that. Elements by tag name. So if I want to get a list of all the H1 elements on my page, I could use get elements by tag name and put H1 in there. Then I would get a list of all the H1 elements inside my page body, or whatever I call my variable name. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's see if I can get body loaded, right, by the event. If body load isn't trigger, something else is wrong, right? Let's try this out. So I'm going to go back to one of these, stop it, restart it, go back up here, refresh, and uh-oh, I got my body tag, but I got no event, right? Why? Again, I can get this, no problem. But when I add an event, it doesn't trigger anymore on load. There's a reason for this. It triggers, and then what happens is it gets overwritten. So that's why window works better for us. The window on load event, the window load event works better for us when it comes to certain things than the body load event, right? How would I code this in HTML? So you get to give you another idea of what I'm talking about here, right? Let's suppose you're going to do that. And if I wanted to just from an index.html, that on my body tag, I could do something like this. Body on load, right? Now this is bad, right? Because why? It's for each time. I got to do it for each page, which is really terrible, right? Body on load is equal to, and then we put the function name in here. So it's something like, you know, body init or something, or an init function. Let's just put it init. There we go. My init function. Now here's the problem. Can I access my init function from my body tag? No, because my init, if I had such a function. The reason for it is because of this iffy. My iffy, here's my iffy, right? My iffy is an enclosure. It's a closure, right? So anything inside this page can't access, right? So unless I put it outside my iffy, which defeats the purpose, right? Then I can do it. Like if I put something outside my iffy up here, and I called it init, so function init is outside my iffy, right? I can do this too. Remember, my document is very fluid. And I can put something like this, on load console.log init triggering. Okay? I can do something like that. So when I load my body, only for my index.html, because I only have this on index.html, none of the other ones, and I'll save it. And when I go to Control-C, and when I run the page again, I'm on my index.html. If I refresh, you can see that I get init triggering. Look at the order that I got it in. Here's my body, right? Then I get an init triggering. And the reason why is because it's on line 14. I can see where this is triggering. It's right out here, outside of my iffy. Right outside of my iffy. Here it is. So there's my tools. I can see it here, right? Because my init is outside my iffy. So yeah, it would work. But in here, it's protected. And this, if I go back to my page again, but the way we're doing it, I'm going back to my page, and the way we're doing it, this is exposed. This init function is exposed. This init function is available for all my pages. Theoretically, I could put my page switcher function, if I really wanted to, out here. But again, that would take away the protection of the wall, the closure we made, right? Here's something else. What if I wanted to expose certain elements of my closure? I want to be able to get into my closure only by name. I want to expose certain things, like a class exposing certain elements. How do I do that? Well, one, I would have to kind of name a variable. So let's say we call a variable, we're going to call it app. Right? And the variable right now has nothing to it. Okay, cool. So a variable's called app. Let's pass in the app variable inside my function. So app. And you know what? Might as well, in here, pass in app as well. So here's, in my actual declaration, I'm passing in the value of app. Okay, there we go. So app is inside of here. Yeah. Bear with me. Because app here, passes it into the outside of the iffy. Then it goes to the inside of the iffy, inside my function. See, this is actually, see these brackets here? There's a bracket, and there's a bracket that comes here, right? Then I got app, which is actually what's being, the outside is being called in, so it's being passed into the inside. All right, so that's cool. Now, let's assign a value to app itself. Right now, we just called it app. And I'm going to assign a value to app in here like this. So app is equal to, it's a global variable. App is outside of my iffy, right? And it's a global variable. We'll call it, your name. Put your name in there, Tom, or whatever. All right, cool. And let's leave everything the same way for now. All right, so again, I'm going to have to restart. And we'll go back, and we'll go back to here, and we'll refresh. Come back to the inspect area. We'll take a look at the console. Oh, what's going on? First of all, we say init is not defined because we killed init. Killed init, right? And we forgot to take that off of my body on load event. So let's get rid of that. So I don't want to do the init yet. And now I only modified my HTML, so I don't have to restart my server. The only time I'm going to restart my server is when I modify my app.js. Here I didn't do anything. So go back to here, refresh. Okay, I still got access to my body, but if I go to my command line and I put the word app in there, press enter, it says undefined. How come? I signed it. How come I don't have access to it again? How come I just can't say something like app is equal to Tom? Right? Now it works on the outside because app, the variable app I created exists. Right? But app, it's now equal to Tom. But if I refresh, if I go app inside and put it undefined, right? Why? Because from a closure perspective, this is a lesson to take back, right? From a closure perspective, I'm passing the value of app in, but anything I do inside of here, who cares? Who cares? I don't care what I'm doing here, right? Be careful with what we're doing because stuff we pass into the function, just so that you guys know, right? In here, if I was to print out the value of app, so console.log app, and obviously it's going to give us what we expect, right? Now, restart the server. It's going to give us the actual value. It's going to give us Tom, right? That's the value of app because that's what we would expect to give us, right? Because we're passing it in, and everything else. Now we're not returning it. What if I did something like this? Forget these page switcher for a second. And then let's say if I returned app from my function. App, I'm returning my app outside my functions. Come down here, woohoo, returning app, right? Nice. So this is where I return app. So I put app in, return app out. What does this return mean anyway? Be careful when we do here. So again, I would have to restart my function. HTTP server, fresh, and I got Tom, but if I go app, press in there, it's still undefined. Right? How can I access my iffy? My iffy doesn't have a name right now, it's anonymous, right? So let's do it a little differently than we just did so far. So here we said app is nothing, right? Watch. Very careful to understand this. But then what if I did this? Oops. What if I said var app is equal to my iffy? Is that possible? An anonymous function, it's a closure. That's what app is equal to, right? Here it is. That's what this is doing, right? And then I'm passing app in, closing it, and returning it back out, right? I'm also passing it into itself. I'm like passing app into itself, right? Be careful. If I refresh, there's Tom. If I press app again, oh, got Tom back. This is an important distinction, right? Because that means I can attach things to app inside my document. Let's go back in here for a second to explain. So let's get rid of this for a second, the console log. And the only time I assign something, a value to app is this. Well, wow, I'm making this whole thing worth this. So let's call this some weird variable. Like, for example, and bear with me while I do this because it's weird, right? Weird logic. What if I did something like this? App.name no name property. But once I use this syntax, at the same time that I'm declaring it, I'm using it, I declare it. I don't have to go var app.name is equal to. I don't have to do that. App is now representing the closure. And app.name is a new property that I'm assigning to the closure that I'm going to call, as an example, make this Tom. And if I go through here and if I look, app is the whole parameter. It says app any. My name is something else, and my Tom is my value. Right there it is. And that's interesting. App now is an item. It's an object, right? I've made app into an object, right? And I return app, but when I return app, what is it? It's not just a variable anymore. I'm returning everything. Let's go back. There's some really weird effects here that we're going to get. So stop, control, go here and refresh. Uncaught exception. So it says type error, cannot set property name of undefined. Why? Again, right? Because name doesn't exist, right? Name doesn't exist. And even if I want to do that way, right? So if I go back, again, there's different ways of approaching this problem, right? Oops, not this. Go back to here, and you can see that I'm trying to attach a property to app. And app is trying to figure out what this is. Remember, it's trying to use duck typing or whatever. I'm trying to figure out what this function is. Yes, it'll pass it out again. And if I make app equal to name, no problem. App equal to Tom, no problem. But if I attach a property to it, it won't work. Okay, let's try it one more time. So we don't do this. Oops. We declare app, but we make it equal to an object. Object notation, right? Okay, cool. I pass app into there, right? And I have app.name is equal to Tom. And then I return app out. Fresh. Okay. Now if I type app.name, I get Tom. If I go app by itself and press enter, I get an object with a name property of Tom. Do you follow me? Well, if that's the case, once I declare app as an object, this is object notation, by the way, when I declare an object, right? There's another way to do this for people who are nervous about this kind of notation, just like we did the square brackets for the array. This is how we do an object. I could do something like this. This var app is equal to a new object. Same. This and the other way is equivalent when I declare a new object. Remember that JavaScript is object first. C# and Java is class first, right? So make a class blueprint, if you will, then I can make an object. Here, I make an object first, then I can add as many properties as I want on the fly, which is really funky for JavaScript because people don't like it. They're like, wait a minute, there is no app, there is no name property. How are you doing this .name? I've never declared a name properly. Yeah, well, when I assign it, I declare it. It's almost like I make it up as I want it, as I want these properties to come up. It's cool. And the reason why this works, I'm just going to kind of just get rid of this for a second. The reason why this works and the other one didn't. By the way, do I even need this return? Oh. The reason why this works and the other one didn't is because app is an object. So that's the only one that's exposed outside of my IFI. The only variable that's exposed outside of my IFI is the variable app, right? Let's make a realistic name for it. App. That's the name of the app. Okay, cool. Well, if this is true, could I not do something like this? Don't know. Hold on here. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. So when I do this, don't freak out or anything, right? App dot page switcher, right, is equal to function, right? Could I do that? I'm saying that app.name is equal to app. This is just another property, but when I do it this way and I make it equivalent to a function, what I'm doing is declaring a method for my app object. So app name is just a property. App page switcher, because I'm making it equal to a function, is now a method. Okay, let's check this out. And it's available outside, right? Because I'm exposing it. Let's try this out. So go down here. And I'm going to go to reset this thing, Control C, up here, paste, and refresh. And if I go app and press enter, now I have a couple things. My name is app, and also I have a function inside of it that I've exposed called page switcher. So that means that I can do something like this, app.pageSwitcher. Page switcher. I could do that here on the command line, right? And I'm going to get this. You are at the home page, right? I can trigger my page switcher outside of my IFI now because I've included it inside my object. This is confusing for some of you, and please just bear with me while I do it. Yes? Huh? Purpose is I can expose certain things inside my IFI and keep other things, hidden. Like, for example, page body, right? I'm exposing page body because I'm doing it this way, right? But now, just wanted to show you. I'm going to get rid of all this. I don't need any of this anymore. What about if I went like this? If I said, I'm only exposing page switcher. Instead of me taking this whole method and putting it out here, I'm adding it into this object that I've declared outside of my IFI called app, that I've passed into my IFI, so I have access to it. By the way, even if I didn't pass it in, still have access. Yeah. There's always a million ways to do it. But I'm showing you if you wanted to expose stuff, and you may want to do this one day to solve problems. And there's sometimes you have to do this kind of thing. This is one of the ways to do it. So page switcher is now a method, that I can enact. I can call upon. Yes. Watch. So now if I go to my index.html and I go back to my body, and if I go on load, right, I could do app.pageSwitcher. Could do that, right? So that exists now. That actually exists outside of my. I can access this thing, app.pageSwitcher. If I was to save, go back here, Control C, start it up again, go over here, and refresh, then I can see that I'm at the home page. Not going to work for projects because projects doesn't have that body tag, that body link. It's not there. But it definitely works for this one. Because if you look at line number 39, you can see that it's accessing this function, this home function, that's getting from, it's being called by the page switcher. Note that home, about, contact, and projects are private functions that only exist and are accessible inside my IFI. But my page switcher method has been attached to my app object, and so therefore it's exposed. App object sits outside the IFI, it's outside the wall, right? And now I've added this object, app.pageSwitcher, onto this. Even though it's inside my IFI, I'm still exposing it, and it still has access because it's inside there to home, about, contact, and projects because it's inside my IFI. Yeah. What do you mean?
You're exposing something, right, for others to see.
Yes.
Information itself, but it's just going to be viewed, right?
Well, I could view it, but I can also I'm exposing it so that way inside my home, about, contact, and projects, I can put a whole list of commands in here for each page specific, right? Let's go back. That's what it's for. So knowing this, I have to put, again, this body tag to work or whatever, and that's so. This is another way. I'm showing you different ways of doing the same thing. I want to wait until the body loads, and then I'm going to access my page switcher. That's what's happening, right? Okay, well, if that's true, then inside my IFI, what I was trying to do, which is this, page switcher, app.page switcher, I can do the same thing, unload, right? But this event seems not to be functioning properly. My body event. Why? Because this IFI only gets activated at the bottom of my page, right? And my event listener gets added in after the page is loaded, right? Whereas, if I go here, you can see that this stuff is at the bottom of my page, right? Traditionally, why we put the stuff, the JavaScript at the bottom of your page, we put it there because if anything fails, and if it was inside my head, if it failed, like I said before, it would block the rest of my page from functioning. It's called blocking, right? So we put it at the bottom so it's non-blocking. So the page still loads, but the JavaScript triggers afterwards. Okay, I don't want to do it this way. This is really ugly, right? In fact, it's so ugly that it has to be done for every single page that I make, right? I want to go there. So I want to do one of these two functions. I know this one will work, right? How about this one? Can I make document.body add event listener work? Well, we have to know what document.body is because we're talking about the document object model here, right? So again, if I go to document.body JavaScript to find out what it is, this is the API documentation. I'm just going to use W3 Schools. There's other places to look too. It says change the background color of the current document by doing document.body style. You can use the style method, and the background color to yellow, whatever. And we've kind of done this before in a different thing, right? And then body itself is the content, right? Body in inner HTML. You can see they got some pretty good examples. Append child, which means I can add. We're going to talk about append child, how we can add an element to the body at the bottom. Append always means add an element to the bottom of your page. Append, right? Okay. So it does work like that. I mean, it does refer to the body. But how come body.add event listener on load, which is equivalent to what we were doing up here with my home page, right? If I look at my home page, you can see that I had this on load event. It was here, right? How come inside my document here, document.body add event listener load doesn't work? Well, we can do this again. Let's just do it inline. Document to test it. Document.body.onload. Uh-oh. How that doesn't work. Look. Onload. That could be right. That could be one too, right? Document.body.onload. There it is equal to, and again, I could do something like this, right? Is equal to an anonymous function like page switcher. App. Sorry, right now it's called app.pageswitcher. Right? By the way, we're going to turn it back to regular page switcher later on. Right? So this document.body onload app.pageswitcher is equivalent to what I did earlier with add event listener. Right? By the way, if you're going to ask how come they have so many ways of doing events, is because JavaScript has evolved. Right? JavaScript wasn't always the same. And so we have to keep backwards compatibility. And a lot of the stuff we have up here works cross-browser. Some browsers require the onload event. Older browsers, not that we care, but we have to put them in there. Other browsers can do the add event listener. Add event listener does not work for some older browsers. So that's why we have both. All right, let's take a look. And we'll just redo this piece. And a little bit of a pain to do this all the time, but it helps in the long run. So fresh, console, with the home page, right? Now, you can see that all the pages work, right? App.page switcher. Let's put this back to normal, right? So we'll leave this for a second, and we'll put it back to normal. We'll remove it from the page switcher. We'll get rid of the whole object, so there is no more object like this. I just wanted to point it out, so if you wanted to expose something later on, you could. So that way, so some people have asked me those kind of questions, right? So how do I expose something out of my IFI? This is one way. We're going to make this, call it back the way it was before, which is function way we had it written before, which was the named function methodology, this way. Function page switcher, and now this should be, instead of app.pageswitcher, it's going to be the page switcher function, right? Get rid of app altogether. All right, we've saved everything. We'll Control C. We're going to go back to here, to our page, refresh. We're still good, right? And we're not exposing anything anymore, going back to what you were saying, right? So why have I brought all this up? One, the idea of objects. Objects are like how I develop objects from C# or Java or whatever. I can create an object on the fly without a class. In JavaScript, I don't need to make a class to make an object. I don't need to do that. I can make an object right away, right? By adding properties and functions. And as soon as I make that object, it exists right away. Okay? If I want to use inheritance and all that stuff, and I want to make new objects based off of that object's prototype, that's a different thing, right? But if I want to make an object, I can do it in 2 seconds. Var, the name of my object, is equal to the curly braces. That's it. I've got my object container. And then I can go, whatever the name of the object is, my object, dot, and whatever the property I want to add, name, address, telephone number, whatever I want, equals to. And it has to be, you have to kind of specify what it is, right? And then if I want to add a method, I can make it equal to var, or sorry, the name of the object, dot, the method name is equal to a new function, an anonymous function, and then it'll be the method. It's very simple like that. And also very confusing for some people. Yes? No, you don't have to. All right, so this works, but I want to take away this methodology, document.body on load, and I want to switch this to the add event listener, right? This worked. Well, how come the other one didn't work? How come this one won't work? Right, so document.body.add event listener, right? Add event listener, load, careful what I'm doing here, right? And page switcher. Same thing, right? This worked fine. This worked perfectly, right? So let's see if I do that. Control C. Oh. Refresh. How come? They don't work. Just because, and I'm putting it up there to you, just because body document.body on load worked, the assumption is that we can add an event listener the same way. But in this particular case, for body document.body, the way it's been written, the add event listener doesn't trigger a bubbling event the same way. Just in case you guys get an error. Also, see how it says load, right? What if instead of load, I put click? Can I click on the body for it to work? Because on load, where am I getting these names? Let me see. Check this out and see what happens. How do I click on the body of my document? That's weird. That means anywhere I click on the background, anywhere will trigger that event, right? Let's see if that works. So I'll go here, refresh, click. Oh, see? Anywhere I click generates that thing. On click worked. How come it didn't work on load? Right, so here I click somewhere on the back of the body, and then you can see that as I'm clicking anywhere on the form, even up here, it's going to generate that thing for every page. So this is the project page. Every time I click on the project page, you can see that that's going to come up. Yeah. Click, load. I do on click and on load, right? Load is whenever if I can do on click and on load, and if you want to look at all the variables that or the events that exist, take a look at the PowerPoint from week 1 that I've given you, right? So if I go to week 1, just for a second so you guys can see this, here's week 1's PowerPoint. Near the bottom, I have this idea of these events. Variable names. No, that's not it. Here they are. Here's body. On load, on unload, on click, but just take away the on, right? These are all the events that exist for different elements. For the anchor tag, for the image elements, body elements, form elements, input elements, text area, select, button. They all have different kinds of events. And for the body element, we have a load, an unload, a click, double click, mouse down, and so on. There's a bunch of stuff for the body. But when I do load with this methodology, right? Save. Nothing. Right? Even if I click here now, it doesn't matter how many times I do that. If I go to home or whatever, it doesn't give me what I'm asking for. And so I would Google it if I were you, right? If I was going to do like a document.body.add event listener. You're going to have to do this. If I go load, right? I can't type that in. It says add an event listener for body on load by JavaScript within the thing. So it tells me body.add event listener load init. The init is saying run this function now and assign whatever. But notice that there's no answer. It says it doesn't work. For IE, it would be attach event. See, different thing for IE. It's true. And these things come back, way back in 2015. But this should work. Add event listener versus body dot, add event listener, right? Okay, that's interesting. Var body, and look what they did here. Var body is what we did. Body is equal document.getElements by tag name. Get the first element and then add an event listener, not document.body. And if I keep looking down here to find a solution, you can see that there isn't one that comes available to you right away. So, what would I do in real life? I wouldn't use body. I would use window. I would use window. So if I was going to go to this, to make it simple, I wouldn't use this at all. And I would use the browser load. So when the browser loads, activate the page switcher. That's what I would do. Not the body. The body, for me to make it simple, without adding additional variables and so on, because I'd have to make it a variable is equal to my body is equal to get elements by tag name 0, right? And then my body, whatever, dot add event listener, load page switcher. So I'd have to actually have an extra variable. Here I don't need one. And to prove this, if I was to go here like this, to launch it, and if I go back here and refresh, I can see now that I get all the pages. I can detect which page I'm on every time. So window is the right way to do it. And it's dynamic in that I don't have to put it outside of my IFI whatsoever. It's inside of my IFI. It still does the exact same thing I want, and I don't have to declare any more variables. I'm showing you this to you because there's going to come a time where you want to do something on load, right? When the body loads, when the body's clicked or something happens. There's differences between document.body. You think it will work, but not all events will work that way because of where this is all positioned. Okay. Let's do a couple of things before we go. We didn't talk too much about documentation, but like I said before, I'm using something called UEDoc for all my documentation best practices. So if I go to UEDoc, if I go into the syntax reference here, syntax reference for UEDoc, I want to start documenting my stuff to say if it's an element or a method or a function or something, I want to start documenting it so I know what it is, submodule, whatever, right? So that means that if I go back up here into my document, I want to use the double, double asterisk, and I want to say something like this. First, I declare the description, which is this function. So uses the document.title, switch content, or JavaScript function between when undo JavaScript function. It's detecting it as a function. When the page switches. You can call this whatever you like instead of page switching, right? I could do something like this at. Notice that there's a bunch of different options here that have come up for me. At function, right? And the function name, which is page switcher, right? And it returns void, right? So I don't have a return type for it, so it's going to return void. People who are doing C# with me should already know how to do this, right? So I'm declaring some information about my function, this page switcher function. Let's do the next ones for home. So again, double asterisk, and then the description. This function provides JavaScript code for the home page. It does. At function, then, gotta be careful here. And then the name of the function home, and what it returns void. Doesn't return anything. There's nothing that it returns. Okay, I can take this whole line here, copy it, and do it for the other ones. So paste, and just change the names. So this is contact, the contact page. Right, this is the about, for the about page. I've already got my documentation started to go, right? And this is projects for the projects page. Why would I do this? Well, it's good practice to kind of comment what each function is, and it keeps your code nice and organized inside your IFI. Not like how we were doing it before. Before, we're just adding code randomly. Let's just add some code, right? No more. After today, that stops. Every time we do something for a particular page, we put it in its particular function, right? Now, you don't have to do it this way. I'm enforcing this method with you just so that you have a little bit more understanding of what each function does and stuff that I'm doing in here. Let's get rid of this. Okay, cool. So let us upload this to GitHub because I made some changes, right? I'm going to say something like this: added structure to my app.js. So added structure, or we'll call it page structure, yes, to my app.js. I will in a second. Bump, bump, and push. So now you have it on GitHub. Go scroll where? This way?
You completely get rid of the app,
Mm-hmm. Take a look at my COMP125 lesson 5 on GitHub. You'll see everything there on app.js. I've taken everything away.
Lesson 5?
Yeah, if you go up on my GitHub,
Yeah.
under Centennial College, and look at lesson 5, COMP125 lesson 5, and look at app.js, it'll show all this. All right, if this is true now, I can add in, instead of a console log, we don't need these console logs. These are just for me to test to see if I'm there, right? So I want to do different things for different pages, like I did before, right? So for my home page, I want to inject something in my paragraph, right? Well, now I can write it inside my function, and I don't have to worry about leaving the function anymore. It's almost like a closure within a closure, right? So I can do something like this. I can say, well, var, my paragraph is equal to document. I don't have this yet. Get element by ID, and we'll call this thing paragraph. But if it's only my first paragraph, I don't have to write it this way, right? Again, going back to this, if I look at my index.html, you can see that I have a paragraph tag right here, right? it with the idea of paragraph 1, but I could do paragraph, all paragraphs, and I want the first paragraph, whatever that is, without an ID. Let's take the ID away by using get elements by tag name. All right. So again, if I was going to go and modify that, instead of going by ID and paragraph, I could do something like document.getElements by tag name, and then just look at the paragraph elements. And I want the first one, which is that's why I'm doing it this way. So this paragraph now is equal to that first paragraph. Okay, good. Now I can do the same thing I did last time, right? I can say something like this: paragraph.inner HTML or text content, whatever you want to say. It's kind of similar. Inner HTML adds HTML tags is equal to, this is my first paragraph, just like we did before. I'll write that data in there, right? And I can do, theoretically, I should be able to do the same code now for each of my functions, but I can modify what it says, right? So I can give kind of like, you know, whether it's I have an ID there or not, I could, and look, it's the same variable. We're using the same variable over and over again, but it doesn't matter because each one of them is inside their own function, which means the scope lives and dies inside these curly braces, right? So I can reuse the name of the paragraph over and over again. So this is my first paragraph on the, well, you're going to get mad at me, right? On the document.title plus, you know, page. Now you got to be careful here because document.title isn't right. About us page, contact us page, whatever it's going to be, right? But I could do that. That's my paragraph text content. And if I want to do that, I'm just going to copy this for a second. Let's put that all inside the same thing. But whenever I have code duplication, you got to think to yourself, oh man, I'm duplicating my code. Is there a way I can write this better? Always think to yourself. If you see duplicate code like this, you're going to say to yourself, this isn't right. What do I do here? How do I fix it? And there's going to be a fix, of course. I'm going to show you this in a second. But first, let's test it like this and see if it works. All right? So again, we're going to kill our function. We run it here. Go back to my page. Refresh. My first paragraph on the home page. See? Projects on the projects page. About me on the About Me page. Contact me. Uh-oh. What happened here? Because Contact Me doesn't have a paragraph. Right? So we don't need to do that for that. So my contact page, this is invalid. Because I don't have a paragraph on my contact page. But I can be specific now. I can connect with each page. But I do have this duplication. So how I would take care of this? Well, I want to kind of put some text, initial text for each of my paragraphs. Let's just say, if I really wanted to do that. I really don't want to, but let's just say. I could have another function like this that I call something like initial paragraph text or initial text. I'll make it up. Here's my initial text. And this function returns the text that I want to return, right? And I could do something like this. Take this var paragraph stuff like this, copy it, or I guess I could. And I could put it inside my this one function, right? There it is. To return nothing now. And of course, I could call this initial text inside each of my my functions that need it. So I could do something like initial text. Right? So I copy this into each of my pages that need it, right? And it takes a lot less room. But I don't put it in my contact page because it doesn't need it. And I could document it, right? I could say this function injects some text into the first paragraph of a page based on its document.title attribute or property. And again, I can put at function initial text, and at returns, still returns void, right? And why do I put this? If I hover over this now, guess what I get? I get all this stuff. That's why I put all this stuff in there. I actually get code hinting. Anything I define, I get code hinting for this. That's why I do this stuff, because I get like almost like IntelliSense, right? Let's see if this works. Do you think it's going to work, actually? That's the first question I got to ask. Well, yeah, because paragraph, it's going to be declared here in my initial text, but it's going to be declared and be destroyed as soon as it's done. Once I finish calling the paragraph, I won't have a link to my first paragraph anymore, because I'm calling it from my inside of my function, and then when the function finishes, once I do this piece here, right, and my function terminates, this variable paragraph will be destroyed, right, because it lives and dies inside these curly braces, right? So therefore, I only do it when I need to, but I don't keep track of the variable. Yes? This? Remember that get elements by tag name. It's not element, it's elements, which means I get more than one element. And because I'm getting the first paragraph, right, I could call this, instead of paragraph, I could call it paragraphs, right? So I could do something like this, paragraphs, if just because you're curious. And I could say something like this, paragraph 0, right? Does that make it clear? Paragraph 0 text content, the first paragraph, do this. But paragraphs holds all the variables. Look, it says node list of HTML paragraph elements, right? A bunch of paragraph elements. If I had more than one paragraph, it would take only the first one, right? So both ways are equivalent. I could do it this way, or I could do it this way. Both are the same. This is an ugly way, but this is what it does. Actually, what I'm doing is, hey, get the paragraphs. Okay, let's test it, because we've dawdled enough. Here, fresh, no more error, home, still works. Projects, on the project page, about me, and contact me. No paragraph, right? So all that works. All the same kind of way we had it before. A couple of lessons back, we're back. We have access to my first paragraph. And the great thing is, in this methodology, when I use get elements by tag name, I don't need to have an ID, right? And sometimes, especially when I'm modifying a page that already exists, that someone else made, I'm not going to have access to maybe adding additional tag names or IDs. I mean, I should, but sometimes I don't want to modify the content of the page. No, I'm showing you one way, right? Because this lesson in this week, if I show this lesson this week, it's all about the DOM. And the DOM, just to go back to that to answer your question, the DOM is this node list, right? So I've got my document. Underneath my document, I have my HTML node, and that's the parent of the head and the body. And then inside there, I can traverse the DOM and by different methodologies. And the one we've been always using is get element by ID. But now, today, we use get elements by tag name. But there's other ones. Get element by class name. Get element by name. And it says returns the collection of elements with the name. Because name is an attribute, right? So let's say, for example, I'm putting it out there for you guys, and you're like, what would I bother, you're saying, right? Well, because it solves problems again, right? An example of this would be if I wanted to make my first paragraph have a name. The name is first paragraph instead of an ID, right? So it's not something that I want to hit with CSS, but I still want it to have a name property, right? Well, let's check this out. So if I go back to this app.js and paragraph document.getElementById. I want to overwrite this in my home function, right? So I do something like this. I'll do the same thing. Var paragraph is equal to document.getElementByName. And I'll put the name of the paragraph in there, which is string name, right? Now look what it says, get elements by name, which means I'm going to have to do this, the same funky syntax, right? It's not one element anymore. So I'm going to call this, what do they call it? Paragraph? First paragraph. That's what I would put in here, first paragraph. And then I would do one of these. And then I could change the text again. Text content is equal to change text. So I put it in this up here once, and then I come back down here and I change it again. Yeah. Class name.
Class name?
Yeah, get elements by class name. So all the elements with the same class. All right, that's another way we can do it. So let's check this out and see what it does. So again, I'm going to stop this, I'm going to start it, and go back here, go to home, and you can see that it's here. If I refresh, it's changed text, right? So I actually put it there and then I changed it again, right? So I can access it by different ways. Get elements by name, get elements by tag name, get element by ID. Again, each one has its uses. Example, I want to hit all the elements in my document with the same class, right? All the elements that have the class active. What element has my class active? Well, my nav bar, right? So what if I want to do that just for my home page? So all elements that have a class active. So I say something like elements active is equal to document.get elements by class name active on my document, right? And I want to look at the first occurrence of that. Or if I don't care, I can have more than one. I want to say something like this. I want to say elements active dot, and I want to say something like style. Can I do that? Can I change the style of the element? I do other things. When I look at the element, I can change, class name. I can do a bunch of other stuff in here. Get attributes, set attributes. But I want to change the style of my element, right? How do I do that? Can I do it, right? I want to change the style, the background of an element with get elements by tag name, right? Well, how about set attribute? Can I go set attribute? I'm just going to put it in there. I'm going to set my attribute of my, or how about maybe if I can do inner HTML, inner HTML, and I'll change the inner HTML of it to goodbye page. Goodbye. Goodie. The first, any element that's active, I'm going to change on my home page. I'm going to change my inner HTML to goodbye. There we go. See how this works. Remember, my only element that's active is on my nav bar for my home page, right? So if I go back here, notice that my home page is active and it says home. If I refresh, just say goodbye. It kills it completely. Takes away all of its styling and everything, right? I can't even click on it.
So if you now click on any other.
Totally fine. But instead of any HTML, if I say inner text or text content, goodbye, and I go here and refresh, you can see that I can click on projects. If I go back here, it's this again, right? Did I save it? Yeah, text content. Elements active. So the element that's active with the text content, I changed to goodbye. Text content. Right? Sometimes it caches too. You want to check it out by going to a non-cache page. This is important too. I go to my incognito window. That's important to do. And I go here, right? And you can see that now it's not caching, right? Let's see how it's messed up. It's messed up. Why? Because my content on my page, right? I really want to be accurate. If I want to go inner HTML, remember the element that I'm hitting, it's very important to understand this, right? If I look at my page to understand how it goes, my element that I'm hitting with a class of active is my list item. My list item, if I change my class of active, so my inner HTML gets changed, it means I wipe away my anchor tag. Right? So what about if I want to modify, and here's something that I want to do. Another one is called query selector, right? Query selector all, or query selector. And then I'll stop recording and we'll take a short break. If I want to modify the query selector, instead of my document that gets element by a class name, I could do something like this, right? How about if I do document dot, or can I use query selector like this, document dot query selector. There's two, there's query selector and query selector all. All right? So I want to say something like this. Here's my query selector all. And now what query selector works very similar to this. It gives me a node list, so elements that are active. But I want to look at all elements that have a class of active, right? All elements that have a class of active that are inside an anchor tag, right? Just like we do at CSS. So things like this, active, all elements with a class of active. Okay, now all elements that are anchor tags, the class of active, right? This is CSS, right? All elements with that are anchor tags, the class of active. I want to look at their inner HTML or their inner text, inner HTML. That's probably the way, and I want to change that to goodbye. Query selector all. So elements active, all elements with a class of active. Let's see if that works. Oh man, what happened? I didn't get a match. That's what happened. So let's see what I'm getting in my inspector. There's my console, no error. And to check to see what this is, elements active. Well, I forgot to do this, right? I get more than one. Right? Let's try this out. Fresh. Now, not only does it, and I killed my icon, right? I killed my icon because my icon is part of my inner HTML. It's inside the I tag, it's inside of my text property, right? Show you what I'm talking about here. And by the way, I can click onto this. I can click on this again. The anchor tag still works, but there's no more. I don't have an icon anymore because I've changed my inner HTML. Let's see if there's any font awesome icons that say goodbye. Is there something like that? Just curious. Oh, goodbye. Oh, how about bye-bye? Yeah. You know, how about something else that says, you know, exit? Is there an exit? Sure. All right. Sign out. Sure. We'll use that one. So here's something I want to do. I want to take this FA sign out. We'll take the whole thing for a second. And because we're doing it, we'll go to this. So it's not just active. We can put in a whole element of stuff, right? Like this. Because remember, this is inner HTML. It's not just text, right? And let's get rid of the ARIA because I don't care about the ARIA right now, right? And we got another problem. There's these outer quotations and inner quotations. We can use these single quotes for the inner stuff. Come on, Tom. There we go. I could do this, right? The space. So my inner HTML of all elements that are active, just say goodbye now. Right? So what used to say home, but now it says goodbye because I've targeted it with my query selector all. By the way, query selector all is something fairly new, and it replaces a lot of the functionality that we can do with jQuery. jQuery has the same syntax. It uses the idea of query selector all to basically hit any element on the page, and I can use the CSS methodology for hitting it. The same syntax we use with CSS, I can put inside my query selector all and select any object on the page anywhere. Okay? This is important because it allows us full control of the objects on the page when I use query selector all. It's more challenging to use because we have to know the syntax here. But the great thing is if you know what we've done, like for example, if I want to target, here's something, my paragraph tag, right? I want all paragraphs that are inside of a div tag, right? Here's how I want to target it, right? And then we'll stop, I swear. All paragraphs that are inside of a div tag, right? See how it goes? With a class of row. Let's get rid of this. We don't care about this anymore. There's this paragraph right here, this first paragraph, right? So all paragraphs with a, that has a class of, it's in a div tag with a class of row. I want to change the color of the whole paragraph or something like the style of the paragraph, change the background color to something else. How do I do that? So instead of this active, I don't want to do this anymore. I could say this. I could say first paragraph, I know which one I want, is equal to document.query selector all. And then I'm going to put in, well, hold on. Yeah, I could do that. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to say first of all, I want to target that. So something that has a div tag with a class of row, right? And there's a paragraph inside of it. How it goes, right? So a paragraph, the way you read it is right to left. Paragraph with a inside of a div tag with a class of row. That's how you read this thing, right? Then I want to get that first paragraph, right? And what I want to do is I want to say something like first paragraph then dot style. Well, how can I do that? How can I use the style attribute? Is it CSS style? Is it just style? Style dot, and I want to do something like background. How come it's not giving me the handle that I'm normally used to? JavaScript style property style object style.color, right? Document element by ID style.color. The reason why it's just not giving me code hinting, that's all it is. So if I go back to this, so I know I could do it like this. I could definitely do .style.color because that's the same thing. But I know that .style, if I put .style anything, it's just CSS style. .color is the front color of my text, right? And I'll make this equal to red. So if this is true, if this all works, then my first paragraph, right, it'll be all red. Let's see if it works. Okay. How did I target this? Because I said the first paragraph that's inside, let's go to my index.html. The first paragraph, here it is, that's inside of a div with a class of row. So this qualifies. This means yes, this is the one I'm querying. This is my selector, my query, right? Exactly how we would target it in CSS. In CSS, if I was writing something, here's my CSS. Here's my app.css. I can do the same thing. I would write it the same way. Div tag with the class of row, the paragraph inside of it, as an example. I want to have it so that the color property is red, right? Same syntax I use in CSS. Same one, exactly, right? And just to prove this out, right? Let's get rid of this. I'm just going to comment it out for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. You'll see no difference. Oh, or will you? Let's go back to that. Oh. Okay, and if I want to change this just to make it more dramatic to blue on CSS, I can do that. And the thing to note is this, right? Remember we talked about before progressive enhancement, right? If we can do it with CSS, do I want to do it with JavaScript? The answer is no, right? We want to do something with JavaScript from a behavioral perspective we can't do with CSS, right? Can't do. Yes, what were you going to ask?
So if you're having a property and CSS as well as in JavaScript file, so it will execute.
Which one will execute next, you're saying, right? What's the order?
Yeah,
What's the order?
Yeah.
I'm asking you, what's the order?
I don't know that.
Well, let's look at the page. You tell me. So here's my CSS. My CSS in this all pages gets accessed up here in my head. Then I come down here and I access my JavaScript, right? What's the order?
So CSS then.
CSS first and then JavaScript, which means what's going to be overriding? JavaScript. Whatever comes last always overwrites what comes before. So therefore, if I go to my app.js and put these comments out and change it from blue to red, we're never going to see the blue because my JavaScript is going to override my CSS. Because, look, here's my page right now, blue, and if I refresh, it's red. Why? Because my JavaScript comes in after the CSS, because CSS works in a cascade. All styles in the document work in a cascade, with the later style overriding the one that just came before. That's how CSS works, right? So here's my style. I want to override it. I put my JavaScript in afterwards. All right? Let's take a short break and we'll finish off this lesson.